Okay, it's 7, now it's 8 past 3. So we'll go ahead and open the meeting.
I will explain that this is to formally advise that as required by General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022 and an act relative to extending certain state of emergency accommodations signed into law on July 16, 2022, the Yarmouth Community Preservation Committee will hold a public meeting on Wednesday, April 5th, 2023, at 3 p.m. in the Town Hall, Room A. The public is welcome to attend either in person or via alternative public access.
Okay, go ahead and we don't have to do roll call. Do we? I don't even think we're voting on anything today.
Yeah, I don't think we need to.
You
So
can for the record if you want. Joanne,
Present.
George,
Aye. Here.
Marianne,
Present.
Paul,
Here.
Judy,
Here.
Christine,
Here.
Gary, here, and Lee,
Here.
Brett. Okay. All right, so we're gonna change the agenda around a little, right? So I think we want to start with the boardwalk. And Kathy, you're gonna do your update. We're gonna do the updates for a few projects.
You want me to sit here or what do you want me to do?
You can sit right here if you want.
Thank you. Kathy Williams, Town Planner. Nice to see you all again and nice to see you, new member. Just giving a brief update on the Riverwalk Park, the boardwalk and the event space. We've actually been making some significant progress since we met with you last in December. We have all of our local permitting through conservation. We have our notice of order of conditions. We have our stormwater. We've already gone through all of the local permitting as well, getting a special permit for the boardwalk from the zoning board of appeals and going through the village center overlay district site plan review process with the planning board. We've also submitted our combined chapter 91 and section 401 water quality certificate to Mass DEP and also our section 404 pre-construction notification with the Army Corps. We've also completed the expanded environmental notification form process, which is through the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act or MEPA. And the project has been deemed eligible for submission of a single environmental impact report. And EIR is required because the 2020 census mapped and they have some regulation change, but we're now located within an environmental justice population for the Riverwalk Park. That combined with some new regulations from MEPA with regard to notification requirements for projects within environmental justice neighborhoods, we are now required to do an environmental impact report. So we're working on that and hope to submit that by April 18th. And because we have to submit an environmental impact report, we also have to deal with the Cape Cod Commission with the development of regional impact. All EIRs are automatically DRIs with the Cape Cod Commission. So we are going to be pursuing an exemption from that, from the Cape Cod Commission. We also need to get a mass highway access permit, and then also we're looking obviously for the final issuance of the chapter 91 and water quality certification. So there's a lot of protections on the property. We want to make sure that we're doing it right and we're doing it in accordance with all. The Drive-In Site Utilization Committee also recently met on March 27th to discuss different opportunities and the process related to accepting donations and offering naming rights to help fund the Riverwalk Park. They discussed utilizing the existing Community Visions, which is a nonprofit that was formed back in 2004 for the purposes of developing, improving, and expanding recreational opportunities, facilities, and programs for the residents in the town of Yarmouth. And this particular nonprofit organization is instrumental in raising funds for the LaRusso Lodge at Black's Pond. And it's still in existence now and still active. The DISEC also discussed soliciting funding for naming rights for various components within the park, such as the restrooms and office building, the playground area, or specific equipment, like maybe the pirate ship. I'd love to see the Witta on the side. I think that would be a great naming opportunity. The event space itself, it could be the so-and-so event space at the Riverwalk Park or whatever ultimately the name of the park is. The kayak launch, the boardwalk overlooks, and maybe even the boardwalk itself. One of the things that DISEC discussed was not having the name of the park itself be for a particular entity and just have it always be whatever it might be. I'm always referring to it as a Riverwalk Park. We haven't decided on that, but we didn't want it to keep changing, like the Cape Cod Pride Riverwalk Park or the blank Riverwalk Park. So keeping the name the same, but then having different components within it being named and limiting the time on that, so we can, in a sense, resell it over and over again and continue trying to find additional funding. So once the DISAC has kind of come to some resolutions among themselves on their preferred direction with regard to donations and naming rights, they're going to need to meet with the Board of Selectmen for their input and approval on that. We also looked into boardwalk blank sales. I think that's all you know is the Bass Hole Boardwalk is all filled up. They've sold all of their planks there. So we have a great opportunity of about 2,000 planks here at the new boardwalk. They could potentially be sold and generate some long-term income for the property. I think the existing process, which is done through the recreation department, will make sense for long-term sales, but because we are constructing a new boardwalk, we don't want to necessarily have the contractor put down blank boards. So we're looking into pre-selling some boards so that the contractor will be part of their contract to engrave them and put them down, so they'll be put down once. So we need to do a little bit more work and kind of get a better idea of how much it costs to do the engraving, so we can come up with a recommendation of what we can sell the planks for. Right now, the planks for like a family at Bass Hole, we're selling for $150, which is really low. And obviously that was Southern Pine, and we're going to be having more of a hardwood, so the plank itself is going to be more expensive. So, you know, maybe we have been talking about maybe $300 and $350, but we want to get an idea of what the actual engraving cost is, because we don't want to just pay for it. We want to actually generate some money that could then go into a separate account for long-term maintenance and repair and even construction of the boardwalk itself. We also looked into bench and picnic table donations. There's an existing policy that the town has, so that was done in 2011 and really needs some serious updating and maybe even expanding it beyond benches to things like picnic tables and maybe some other things that could be incorporated in there. The current policy now basically has someone purchasing the bench itself, getting the memorial thing put on, and then dropping it off at the DPW, and then the DPW would then go and install it. Due to staffing and a variety of reasons that we don't have a lot of necessarily open spaces for benches right now, that whole program has been placed on hold and isn't being implemented right now.
Can you just make sure that they don't bunch up like a
Yeah,
boardwalk?
Agreed.
asshole?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, space them, you know, it's just not
Right. Yeah,
pleasant.
yeah, it's a little crowded there. I concur. But just to kind of give you guys a reference, the recent Sandy Pond playground, those benches to purchase and have them installed were $3,200 a piece. So that, you know, the $700 back in the day isn't going to cut it anymore. So we also need to talk about further discussions with regard to what is the town standard for benches that we want, what's the town standard for tables? What would the donation amount be, and you know, who's going to and how are they going to actually get installed? Is that going to be part of the donation fee? So that's a whole separate project that I think the DPW and Parks Department and Rec Department might be working on, but perhaps for the Riverwalk Park, that's something that we could include as an element as part of our donations program that we're hoping to get going. I just also have an update on some of the other funding sources that we have looked into. We went and had a meeting with the director of the Office of Fishing and Boating Access to discuss possible funding for the kayak launch. That basically is about a 1.35 million annual capital budget that they have. In our discussions with them, it sounded like the grants were going to really be limited to $125,000, maybe $150,000, which was unfortunately a little lower than what we were hoping for. But he who has the gold makes the rules, and there's a bunch of different requirements and restrictions that go along with that. Like no kayak rentals will be allowed, so that little kiosk that we have for kayak rentals is not something that they would allow. They also need.
So if you don't, so doesn't that have more potential than their stupid $125,000?
Yeah. So, and there's a bunch of restrictions
How
here.
are they doing in Dennis? I think they get like $30,000 for that kayak one. Right across the river.
That's something that Jim Saban was gonna look into. He was gonna reach out to Dennis, the chair of the DISAC, and see what's actually being generated there. They're also gonna require us to dedicate a certain number of parking spaces to the kayak launch. We're talking about 10 spaces being dedicated. And if you have any type of special event there, you might need to get a permit from the state in order to have certain public events there. And we also need to sign a land management agreement for the facility, and we just want to be clear that we define the facility, because there's no alcohol sales or commercial businesses that are allowed, and we want to make sure that it doesn't apply to the event space, because we want to be sure that we can do those things there. So these are the problems with all these different grants. There's so many different details, and the devil is in the details.
Right, so they'll pay towards a kayak launch, but you can't rent kayaks.
You can't rent them, no, they have to be open for, you can have,
It's
you can
just
have racks there,
access.
and the town could continue to charge $150 a year, whatever they charge to have the racks there, but the actual sales for the vendors would not be allowed. So the DISAC had the same conversations, kind of some concerns that you had. So they're gonna do a little bit more investigation, see what's going on over in Dennis with the vendors before they determine whether they think we should be applying for this. And the Board of Selectmen should probably be pulled into that loop as well.
Does Dennis run the kayaking boat?
They lease it out, it goes out to bid.
You're right, I think there's some type of, like the concession stands here. would be
And I've had
something along-
friends who've looked into it and what they get for it, it's a lot. Yeah,
But I'm against what it-
yeah, for the lease. They lease it to the rental company.
I did look into the mass trails. I went to a webinar, and basically trails and walking paths that are in part of a park are not eligible for a mass trail. So,
And only conservation areas.
right, it's more like, exactly, more of a conservation, more of a, in the woods kind of trail. Although Mass Trails did pay for, we got 150,000 grant and another 300,000 grant for the shared use pathway on Higgins Kroll. So that was something that they were looking on under Mass Trails. A park grant, in order to be eligible for that grant, we need an updated open space and recreation plan, which we are currently working with the Open Space and Rec Plan Ad Hoc Committee. We may be able to deliver a draft review to the state by June, which would make us eligible to the July 2023 deadline. This is a fairly competitive grant, and the maximum award is $500,000. We just need to do, again, further investigations to make sure that there's not any specific restrictions associated with that particular grant that will cause us difficulty. And then we also need to see how it might impact with our existing land and water conservation fund grant. So right now, that land and water conservation fund kind of encompasses all of the park and the trails within there. Would it be okay to put a park grant on top of that and do some of the trails and that type of thing? So that needs to be further investigated. And then the last source is the Tourism Revenue Preservation Funds. The CEDC has been very supportive of the event space, and they've been funding a portion of the design for the event space. And we are working on compiling a memo with some information on construction costs and looking for some additional physical improvement funds for them in May. So prepping for town meeting, we have 3 articles kind of on the warrant related to the Riverwalk Park. One is $500,000 for free cash, 3 million in available undesignated CPA funds, as you well know, and the 3 million in the bonding authorization secured by future CPA funds. We are going to have a brief presentation at the annual town meeting. We did give it to the Board of Selectmen last night, and I have the attached slides. We're really going to have a script that goes along with that kind of goes over the salient points of the project, explaining the purpose and the benefits. Along with, there's actually a slide that reviews the debt service on the back page. It has it more in a chart format, so kind of see that as the years go by, each year, CPA revenues go up because the general taxes go up by 2.5%. So in a sense, you proportionally go up. And then the debt will be decreasing over those same 10 years as the CPA is going up. So the dark blue here is kind of showing you that undesignated amount that would be available for all of the 4 categories for CPA. Included at the bottom are the minimums for admin of I think 5% and then 10% for historic housing and open space. The light blue is the debt service from undesignated funds for the 3 million bonding authorization, and then the blue will be available completely for any type of project. I know that housing has been a concern for people and having CPA funds for housing. I think one of the things we need to keep in mind is it takes a long time for projects to kind of work through the system. This project, the Riverwalk Park's been worked on for 8 years. So maybe this is the golden year for recreation and for the Riverwalk Park. Mary Wagon's working very diligently with funds that she already has, probably for the next 12 to 18 months on a potential project across the street here for Habitat for Humanity. So there's a certain level of number of projects that staffs can actually accommodate and keep moving forward. So there might be different golden years for different buckets here, and we may find that we have a great open space parcel that we want to purchase, and if we don't have efficient, maybe that's a perfect example of another project where you might want to bond for, because we don't want to lose that particular opportunity as we move forward. So I think we kind of need to snatch the brass ring right now. We're really close to having this project. We're closer to having an actual project constructed on this site after 37 years of trying than we ever have. So I'm really hoping that people can just stay the course, not blink, and kind of move forward. So we've had a lot of stuff going on, so be open to any questions that people might have.
Okay. We got Kathy here, anybody with any problems? I see Jeff's there also, if anybody has any.
I also want to just recognize Stephanie Cox from the
Well,
finance
Stephanie,
committee.
you're also here, it's in the record, if you have any questions also,
And
feel
just,
free to raise your hand and.
I came because my understanding was you wanted
We
an
do.
explanation of the finance committee's position on this article. So I don't have any particular questions.
Well, maybe you could explain to us, so
Sure.
your, how you voted 3-2 to approve, correct?
Yes.
So I know it's gonna come up at town meeting. What was the disapproval? What were the concerns?
Sure. I want to also be respectful of Kathy's time as well. And
Kathy'd rather hear it here than town meeting.
Yes.
I agree. It's all one, it's all, okay, topic. So, the finance committee, so let me kind of run through the overview of where the finance committee is. There were a number of people who felt that this amount of money going, and this project in general, they had some real hesitations around it. It was also brought up in the context of, we have a massive housing crisis going on, and this is what we're spending money on. People felt there was a better use of the funding. And I absolutely recognize, Gabby's comments about, you need to have projects that have kind of gone through work. You've got a nice list of affordable housing projects that you've done, over the years. Unfortunately, the name of the game is always, what have you done for me lately? And when you have households making a combined $200,000 a year struggling to rent or buy in Cape Cod, we have a real crisis. So, the question that kind of came up is, this is great, but who's going to be left to enjoy it? So needing to kind of balance that. So I wasn't sure we were going to be able to get a majority support for the article. So the compromise that I offered was, and this is just in our memo to the board of selectmen, I don't think it will appear on the warrant, but we said that we recommend it with the caveat that out of consideration of the amount and length of the funding for this open space item, as well as the burgeoning housing crisis, the finance committee recommends during the term of the debt that CPC consider prioritizing distribution of annual appropriations towards housing. So it's just it's a caveat of saying we're behind it, but as you look forward and given how much this essentially kind of takes off the top. I mean, I know that you have to do your minimum 10% of everything, right? But given how much that's going to take off the top, something that the finance committee would appreciate if your committee would consider is in future years, really prioritizing housing. The other thing that I'll say, this came from, it's funnily enough, because I'm the housing advocate in the group, and it didn't come from me. But I will say, as a housing advocate, just someone who has a lot of experience on the topic, I would suggest as well that the typical approach that municipalities have taken over the past 30 years or so, doesn't have to be the way that the committee has to approach it in the future. For example, there are a lot of projects, there are a lot of funding items that could be done that don't require staffing time to go into it. So or a minimal amount. So for example, gap funding for affordable housing projects that are being developed by, Preservation for Affordable Housing or another nonprofit. First time home buyer programs that are administered by a nonprofit in the region, like Hatch or something. Zero interest. There's also one of the things that would be a staffing issue, but again, bearing in mind that the town has done this whole buy down approach. That worked when you had houses that were available for $275,000. You don't, there's 675,000 or 800 or $1 million. So looking at it differently, how can we get more bang for our buck? You know, one of the things that you could take a look at is as the town in the fall takes on the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, you know, you could do things like a grant fund to legalize illegal units with a condition that people, you know, rent them affordably. You could do zero interest loans or help homeowners cover upfront ADU costs because it costs $7,000 before you can even figure out if you can build one. There are a lot of different things that the town could be doing that isn't just, you know, a Habitat for Humanity house or converting a motel on 28. There's a lot of them. So, you know, in sum, I'd say the committee didn't have a problem with the approach of the bonding. I'm going to try to note that. That does appear sound, and the finance committee in general is, I would say, has a much more liberal viewpoint than perhaps in years past when it comes to the need to really utilize borrowing. You know, we really don't want to be, you know, we want to maximize money and you know, not be penny wise and pound foolish. So we think that approach is good. You will have the vote in favor 3-2 at town meeting. So that's just generally where we came down, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I just as a point of reference, I don't know if you have it, but you know, and I certainly, we all respect you asking us to do more money towards affordable housing. I just want to say our track record shows we've given more to affordable by a huge amount, like $5 million more than any other category. So we always have prior to us that we realize there's a housing project, but we aren't proactive. So you need to work with the town and they need to bring us projects and ask for funding. I can't think of any we've said no to.
No, I can't either.
I can't.
And in line with that, you mentioned POA, Stephanie, and they've got some great projects. There's nothing restricting POA from submitting an application.
Sure.
And they're huge. They're throughout the state. Actually, they're nationwide. I'm not sure why they haven't, but when you mention POA, they're one of the bigger and better ones. And they really know what they're doing. So I don't know. I don't know if this small amounts are what they go after. They just really go after the larger amounts. But, you know, we are recipients of the project requests. We're not out there marketing. And that's part of the give and take here is we act on what you know, people submit. So, but your mention of POA is a really good example of a nonprofit that wouldn't affect any kind of staff, hopefully wouldn't affect any kind of staffing needs in town hall. Yeah.
Okay, Christine.
Also, if you look at the dollars given, you know, for housing, many times we give seed money. We may give $1 million and it may produce a $10 million project.
That's great.
So we don't get credit for the $10 million. We only give you the $1 million to get the seed money to get it going, the permits and everything else.
Yeah.
So you really can't look at the dollars we give, you know, even though it's substantial.
Well, that's our intent with every project, including the Dryden
Yeah.
site, is giving enough money that they can go out and seek other grants so that, you know, we become the seed money for everything. We're going to have to do that more and more as we go forward because we're not going to have as much money because of the bonding issue. Plus, state revenues are down as far as real estate goes, and that's where the great source of our state match comes from. And that's down.
One of the things that we talked about on the phone when the memo first came out too was reaching out to the trust, to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Mhm.
Because I think some of these ideas are super, and I think the trust can help advocate for.
Yeah, and your, you know, your points are well taken that, you know, your role is to respond. Absolutely. I think part So just the ideas that I was just mentioning, these are just ones
I
that.
had a couple of good ideas that I'd never even thought of there, which I think are wonderful,
Thank-
especially if the new bylaw passes.
Thank you. And those are just some ideas. I think ultimately what that it requires is. It's like with wastewater, you know, we had it slapped down 10 years ago. And then we were a little shy for a long time, right? And we kind of, as a town collectively needed to say, okay, this is a crisis. This is something that needs the dedicated support of staff. And a direction and an agreement kind of by all different parties and leadership amongst the town. That we're gonna focus our efforts on this and we're gonna get it done. And God would, hopefully, finance committee's been very, very vocal about the need for this, and the lack of choice when it comes to wastewater, but we came together. And I think it's a similar type of thing. This is the big crisis on, you know, not just on the residents here. And we're seeing locals being displaced left and right. So please don't take this as a criticism. Because we certainly understand the value of this particular project and the work that you all have done to date. It's simply the finance committee, every single year that I've been on it, we've been hearing, and it's been getting worse and worse, particularly this budget year as we're putting together our budget. We hear from every single town department how they cannot find workers. And I will tell you a dirty little secret that I'm, you know, the rumor is that a particular municipal entity on the Lower Cape, which will remain nameless, has to go with their 8th best candidate when they hire, because the 7 preceding cannot find housing. And they're the canary in the coal mine for us. So when we think about it from a municipal finance perspective, the staff, you know, we want to have good quality staff that we invest in. And if we don't, then we have to look down the line to what, you know, other towns are doing, which is they're providing housing stipends. Like, do we really want to get into the business of providing housing stipends for town employees, or do we want them to be able to find housing within the marketplace, right? And so I understand that CPC can't solve all these problems. It can't solve things for people who make more than 80% of AMI, but given that this is such a huge issue, an existential issue facing the town and the Cape writ large, you know, it's something that if we can kind of collectively come together and say, you know, we want to prioritize this and put the word out that we want to prioritize this, then maybe we'll get more, you know, proactive applications from other entities.
We have, and we've worked with, you know, we've worked with HEC for years since they ever started coming to us. And every year we go, we want to give you more. They don't have the staff that they can do it, but you can do so much more with staff on the private sector than tying into the
Exactly.
town. We don't have enough staff to do it.
Exactly.
Yep. Paul.
Yeah, you know, one of the things, I mean, it's all interesting, comments, and certainly the housing situation is moving out there. And will have impact on many of us, in all the towns in the Cape, so on. The thing that concerns me though, is that the vote with a couple of, you know, negatives here. In that presentation to, town meeting, which to me kind of puts a lot of the work that's going on and has gone on for 7-8 years, but also for 37 years, in jeopardy. Because it's a complicated scenario. So I wonder if, number one, and I don't know if it's possible, if the finance committee could reconsider the vote, number one, to go into this with a united front in terms of this committee and what we do, as has been described here, being recipients of these requests, and to move forward after the fact to prioritize in the way you do. And again, you know, it's not a big adjustment for this committee because, as Gary says, we give more money, you know, we award more money to housing than any other consideration. So it wouldn't be difficult to prioritize going forward. But I'm just worried that this vote is gonna raise a lot of questions that, you know, would be expected at town meeting, and I would rather go in with some sort of a understanding amongst the boards that, you know, this thing has been taking a long time. This is something that's important for the town of Yarmouth, and has been for a long time. And now is not the time to pull the plug in any way, shape. So let's reconsider.
I mean, if you wanted, if one or more of you wanted to come to a finance committee meeting, I don't have any scheduled between now and town meeting except for right before town meeting. You know, if you wanted to do a presentation, I could see if the committee is willing to get together before then, and we could do a presentation. I can't guarantee you anyone's votes. You've already got mine, but you know, I don't know if it'll be a good use of your time or not, but if you'd like to do that, I absolutely, as chair, would be happy to. You know,
Well, am I being a little bit too much of an alarmist in terms of this, do you think? Or not?
Well, I think you raise a good point. I mean, the 3-2 vote was on the bonding authorization. If I'm looking at the article,
Yeah.
it's not on the project. The project, you guys were unanimous. Go for it.
The original, the 3 million.
This is the first 3 million. Yeah, that's in the Article 32 is a 6-0 unanimous vote on what I will call kind of the project.
I don't
The
know if
C-
everybody realizes.
But when
Because it was.
But on the Article 33, which is the bonding, I'm concerned about confusion, particularly for the finance committee to not like the idea of using somebody else's money to do something is alarming. That is alarming to me. I mean, you always try to use someone else's money when you have a project this big. I think. So that's where I'm a little confused as to the nature of that financing mechanism is what you're concerned about, or
No.
future use.
No, I would say no one raised any concerns about the idea of bonding.
Okay, oh, good, all right.
It is about the idea of essentially lopping off the top for future.
Yeah, locking in that commitment. I see what you're saying. Okay,
That's where the nature of the concern is.
okay.
Well, believe me, we were too. I mean, that was our concern, and we've met many times over this. Kathy knows, we have real concerns about it, because we always talking about what we try and do, the best use of the taxpayer's dollar. We always consider that, but this has gone on for such a long time. This is the least intense use that's been proposed for that site. And we were a big part of when they were proposing the marina. We go have an analysis done, send out an RFP, see if anybody be interested in running this as a marina, after we'd already put some design money into this. And the answer was from every developer, no, that this doesn't make sense. You can't get enough boats in there, can't get big enough boats. So we were a big part of not going forward with the marina. But this is, if we're ever going to do anything with this site, ever, this is probably our one chance.
Yeah, and I think that there are a couple members of our committee. The members of our committee who voted against it are newer members. So
Yeah, there's a long history to this. and nobody
so
can
maybe
tell
it's
you.
worth, giving some history and presentation. I will say one of the other topics that did come up was the revenue producing piece of it. And so it's a little concerning to hear that, one of these grants, you might not be able to do kayak rentals, that sort of thing. Because I think from the perspective of the finance committee, we would want to see this be a property that is.
It has the
revenue
potential
producing.
to at least raise enough money for the maintenance. And Kathy knows that, again, you got kayak rental, plus if you have artist shanties, you have events there. If we do our due diligence, there's a potential to make money for the town every year for that site.
Yeah.
If it was privately run, they would make money off it.
Yeah.
That's not that, that's,
$350 is a chunk of money. And the carnival that was there, $15,000 for one weekend event. So there's the opportunity the kayak launch is one small thing. I think there's other opportunities.
Yeah, and I think it's less about this, the one-time boardwalk piece, but more the ongoing revenue piece. And because, it's not just about the maintenance, right? It's one of the things the finance committee has also really been asking town departments to do is to really look for how can you actually be making money for the town, earning money for the town. The example I always use is, we have here in Yarmouth and every other town on the Cape has their weights and measures done by the town of Barnstable. Barnstable doesn't doing that out of the heart, the goodness of their heart. They're doing it because they're making money off of us. So I always ask the town department heads, what is it that you do really well that maybe other people don't do as well? You've got a competitive advantage on that you could be generating revenue. Same type of thing when it comes to these types of projects. Are there things that doesn't have to be our own residents? It could be what are our visitors paying for? That type of thing. Just when we look at, the finance committee looks at, we're always going to be stuck in this choice of, do we ask our residents to pay more and do up 2.5 overrides or whatever, or do we keep just bleeding ourselves in terms of staff and not investing in the town? It's terrible choices to make. So our position is let's try to look for whatever revenue generators we can and have that lens.
George?
So to kind of a segue to Paul's comments where people might be confused. And so would it be possible, once the article is moved and then the moderator asks finance committee, what do you approve? Would it make sense at that time to say yes, and we would like to offer an explanation of the 3-2 vote to get that out front in anticipating you're going to get the question?
Yeah.
Why did the 2 not vote? So I don't know if we've done that before or if that's.
I think we have, but I
Yeah, no, and I think that it happens kind of organically most of the time.
That
because
was my
the-
original, this question is probably going to be asked.
Right.
Right.
So,
is-
so,
You balance it.
As far as
did-
us going to your meeting, I don't feel like that would be proper for us to go to your meeting and try and change your vote.
Do you think that the 2 members, because we weren't at the meeting, and I know Bob was there. I haven't watched the meeting. But would it be helpful for us to reach out to them directly?
absolutely, yeah, that's another
and
option.
Talk to them?
Yeah, and I would say, I don't feel that it's improper because we have had last year, for example, one of the recycling articles. We had nobody came to us. This is one of the problems with communication in the town. Why I'm so excited to have a new communications manager. Is because, left hand, right hand, nobody knows what's going on. So presentations may have been done by a petitioner for one article for the Board of Selectmen and the recycling committee, or for your committee, but not for us. And then people not realizing that we had a vote on it. So not having any information on that recycling article, we were like, how is this going to affect the school budget? How is this going to affect, our local businesses? So we voted against it, but then we also, because we had to get a vote, out there, but then we also reached out proactively to the DY superintendent as well as the Yarmouth Chamber. We found out from them, they weren't, school wasn't aware of it, but we found out from them, it's not, the cost was minimal. We found out the chamber was in favor of it. And so that day before town meeting, we amended our vote and we explained that from the floor. So I would say, we always want more information, right? I would say if you're framing it that way, if we just want to make sure you have a little bit more information, I don't see how you can say no to that. Just
Well,
with
my whole point, we've gone out of our way to not be proactive. You come to us, everybody, every other town department, everything, bring it to us and then we'll vet it and vote on the merits of it, one way or the other.
maybe it's
Okay,
But
project.
we don't like going to other committees and going,
Right,
you should be doing this.
No, and I think, Gary, just to be clear, so like, I know that when we had the community development, and we did the overview of the, I think, tourism fund, we did the overview of the CPA stuff, and I don't recall, I think that one of the folks who voted no was at that meeting. There weren't a whole lot of questions. I think it was a bonding question. I think the other person wasn't at the meeting.
Mhm.
So I think it is a good opportunity that, you know, Kathy and I could reach out.
Well, you and Kathy can reach out, absolutely.
That's.
But
and
not
the-
this committee,
Right.
I don't think that would read correctly with the voters either, because, oh, we went through CPC and then it went to finance and CPC went back to them and asked them to change their,
I
But
think
it
my
should come-
comment, and maybe I should have been more clear, was really for.
I would
staff
say
to reach
Kathy
out
would
to
be
the
number
members.
one
Yeah,
to go in there
absolutely.
and say, could you reconsider this? The worst answer would be, no, we don't want to.
The other thing is just the warrant, I don't know, it's gotta be going soon if it hasn't already. Is, the warrant is off to the printer and it
Call the
has.
printer right now and stuff.
I'll be right back. But yeah, so that 3-2 vote is in the warrant.
I don't think it's gonna be a killer. Paul.
So-
I
so-
I don't think so.
I could be wrong.
Yeah,
Your question about about could we offer some kind of explanation? We could. I don't want to also, I have a fine line, well, yeah, and also I have a fine line that I have to walk as chair of, I don't want to misrepresent the vote and say, you know, if not for, you know, if the town, you know, community preservation puts more towards housing, then we'd be all for it. I don't know that that is exactly where the committee would be. I think that there are, you know, 1 or 2 members who just philosophically just weren't necessarily crazy about the project in general, so you
The
have
project meaning the Riverwalk.
the Riverwalk, yeah. So I think though, if we did have a change of vote, we would absolutely, I would absolutely say, Mr. Moderator, the vote, and you know, we've had a meeting before this, our vote is now, you know, 4-1.
Well, yeah. If I may also, just to, you know, in listening to this, you know, I guess maybe I would go back and agree that, you know, maybe changing the vote is not the thing to do, because one of the things this committee, as long as I've been on it, it's not been too long, a couple of years, has been, that we make decisions based on the merits of each one of the applicants and decide to put it forward, and the bottom line is the voters decide. And that's
But-
always you know,
I think that was part of the reason we even voted unanimously.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if there's somebody on this committee who really didn't want it, we don't want to be the ones to say no.
Yeah.
It should be the voters. It's their money.
yeah, because.
So what we do, and we've always done, we're voting, we feel it warrants going to town meeting. That's what we're voting on. Not that we're saying we recommend it or not, but we feel it warrants having the taxpayers decide.
And it's one of the only, and Gary has said this many times, it's one of the only, or maybe the only area in town government where the voters decide in this fashion. That yes, we want to spend that money, no, we don't. And so maybe just put it out there. A couple of people have a problem with it. There's an awful lot of people who like the idea of the river walk park or whatever it's gonna be named. And let the chips fall where they may.
I think there may be some misunderstanding from the voters on that, because I don't know how it is for CPC, but when the town moderator asks, they ask, what, you know, he can ask, what's the recommendation?
I know
from
Christine
Finance
brings
Committee?
it
What's
up
the
all the time.
recommendation?
I don't think the voters do understand, but I don't feel it's for us to get up there and explain why we voted for. Here, it's yours. We recommend you vote on it. That's what we're saying. We recommend town meeting vote on this.
Yeah,
And
that's-
Christine brings it up all the time. Like, maybe we should explain that we're not, because there might be some of us on this committee who really, if it was their own money, they wouldn't favor the. But I personally don't want to make a decision for all the other voters in this town and not give them the opportunity.
I understand that.
When we saying, I mean, even personally, when we say we're recommending that it go to town meeting for the voters to vote on it.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I just don't think
necessarily-
most people interpret it that way, so that's all.
It's their money, it's their money, you know. I mean, also, this is, we have to look at every application almost equally. There's different categories, so, you know, historic and housing and.
Yeah. Open space.
Open space.
It's your committee.
Mine have designated amounts of money to spend But if any category goes over what's designated there, it has to go into has to come out of the undesignated fund. And this is where we really go around the table as to what, applications, are they gonna get that money out of undesignated?
I mean, and some towns have chosen to go beyond the minimum 10% designation for certain categories, particularly as the housing crisis has worsened. So that is, you know, another option to consider.
Well, the other, and I talked with Karen about this also. We do the 10% anyway, but I don't feel like we should be going, all right, well, next year, we're gonna spend 20. Because if that doesn't happen, if we vote to reserve 20%, suppose nobody brings us a housing project forward. Now, we've taken money out of somebody who might be ready to spend, shovel ready to go with the project, and we put it into housing. That's why I say it's important that the people in housing, the private sector, Mary, everybody, you bring it to us. I think more than ever, and we've proven it our track record, we do prioritize housing. We've done it in the past by $5 million over every other category. And I think we would have no problem doing that now. We all recognize the problem.
Yeah, and again, I would encourage you to see this as the committee's view of looking forward. This is a very special circumstance of the bonding that you are doing is lopping money off the top.
We know that.
Right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's why our language is, given that, we would recommend that you consider in the future prioritizing housing. It's not in any way meant as, you know, you haven't done a good job on housing to date. It's just, given these conditions, this is what we would suggest. And you can take our suggestion and you know,
No,
or you can leave it, you know.
we
whatever
appreciate it. We
feel,
want
but
other
That
people
is the
coming
committee's
to us and saying,
perspective.
but I'm sure we will.
Everybody's
Kathy?
advocating for their applications.
I would just say sometimes in the past, I've seen someone from the public get up and say, could someone from the finance committee explain the
Yeah.
two dissenting votes, and then somebody would, sometimes they'll come down and they'll explain it. I think maybe if we can meet with the two individuals, kind of maybe bring them up to speed on the project, maybe if that gets asked
I don't
at the
think you-
meeting, they can say, we have.
I don't think you want to meet with the two. That personally, that would violate the open meeting. You gotta,
It's not violating open meeting.
I don't think that's a good idea, but
Okay. I was just saying, maybe we could educate them on the project, and then at town meeting.
You know, they're gonna get up there.
Right, but I'm just saying, maybe that will be more educated about the project. I was originally concerned about this, but now I found out a little bit more about the Riverwalk Park, and I feel a little bit better about it.
well, sometimes, there's two different ways of looking. We do it here and we have our discussion here, but you want to be careful what questions you bring up at town meeting floor. Because you could open a whole can of worms down, I know you're not gonna, but by doing so, you may bring forward a bunch of questions that nobody ever thought about. So you gotta be careful with that.
And you don't know what the new vote might be either.
Right.
You don't want it to be worse. So I think.
Could be
meeting-
worse. Right.
Be the prudent will be great. And then we'll try to convince, in the presentation, why it's important.
Where's the presentation going to take place? Comes up first on the free cash?
This is, I guess, something that we need to talk about a little bit, because what will happen is free cash will come up and everyone will say, does anybody want to hold something? If somebody actually wants to hold the boardwalk on the free cash, I think we need to give our presentation then, because that's the first bite out. Again, when it comes as 32C, if somebody holds that, we might need to give our presentation then, or we might just be giving it under 33, which is the bonding.
I think it's a question, and we didn't have a chance last night, but not really. I think it's really a question for the moderator. That we should have a conversation with the moderator, maybe the town administrator, and how to do
I
it.
think it should come up in the beginning, just so everybody knows that there's three parts to. There's three different votes.
So
I
we can
think
talk to the
that
town
should be
administrator
explained
about
that
it.
way to the voters, that this is a three-part thing and approval, because really, not one of them does us any good without all three of them.
Well, I will just, I don't want to take up too much of your meeting, but I will say, that again, this is an effort to get, as many members of the committee in favor of the proposal, as possible. We do have a majority, it may be a slim majority, but it is a majority. And if anyone would like to speak with either the full committee or individual members who had voted against it, we would welcome that. We always welcome having more information.
I have one other question.
Sure.
Is there any other part of town government that contributes in any way? I always look at the CPC money. Is there another department, another entity within the town that also makes plans or sets aside funds, whatever, to potentially assist with housing?
With housing?
Housing, right?
I mean, there's,
Because I'll tell you, my frame of reference is conservation. The conservation fund. I think I asked you, I'm gonna forget at a meeting. Does the town contribute any money to that conservation?
And the answer to
fund?
that
Or
was
1967
not
or
recently.
something.
maybe not that.
But my point is, it seems like this is the.
There's state, I mean, it's CPC has the funding for the four dedicated purposes,
Yeah, there's
right?
money.
I think you can argue there's general fund, funds that are being allocated towards maintenance of things like the historic structures. The community development budget and the DPW budget covers, care,
Okay.
the day-to-day kind of care. of
Let's say
different
this didn't
structures.
exist.
Well,
What
and
would
this
town-
we can't do maintenance with this money, so.
What would the town in any way, shape or form, to look forward and see that, as you're saying? And, boy, housing is gonna be a real problem here. We're getting into a real tough time.
I think Stephanie made a good point that really the town rallied and we've really focused on wastewater most recently. And we're putting a lot of funding. into
And that's
wastewater.
fantastic.
So outside of a new focus, there's no other funding. There's funding that the Affordable Housing Trust gets, which is in part and probably mostly derived from CPA
Yeah,
funding.
yeah.
But then there's outside grants.
And also just to answer your question with the context of what other municipalities, again, particularly on the lower and outer Cape are doing.
Mhm.
There is absolutely precedent for towns to take general funds and other sources of funding and put them into their Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Provincetown has changed it from a Affordable Housing Trust Fund to a workforce trust fund that serves households making up to 120% of area median income. There are a broad range of things to, this is, forgive me for one moment as I get on my soapbox and just say, this is one of my frustrations with the as a region, we don't always talk that well to each other. And, there are various things like the One Cape Summit and other things that, I just think that there's so many ideas that are coming out of it from other towns that we could benefit from. But that's an aside, as with anyone here, but there's lots of different approaches to answer your question.
Okay.
So that the burden wouldn't, I don't think it's fair for the burden to be 100% on community preservation, and I think that's where the heart of your question is. But I think there's lots of, again, it comes back to that idea of, can we say this is a priority for the town? Can we put resources towards it? Can we connect with other towns that are doing other things? Can we kind of go all hands on deck? And I would say part of that all hands on deck, I would hope, would be CPC as well.
It always has.
Yeah, no, it's,
Yeah.
I've always been a big advocate, like we're talking about now, talking about this town. If you really want to do some impact on housing, have a regional housing. Like maybe us, Dennis, Brewster, and we all get together and we all chip in and do a large that really has an impact. Because nobody's gonna say, well, you live in affordable housing in Yarmouth, so you have to work in Yarmouth. I mean, we're working with Dennis on the project for the thing in Dennis, and it's gone great, and they're doubling the size of it, and we're part of it. And we got them asking Brewster for money, we've chipped in, Dennis has chipped in.
Sandwich approved their funding.
Did they? Even Sandwich. Even
Yeah.
Sandwich.
I think here, one of the things.
Thank
to
Okay,
bear
thank
in
you,
mind-
Kathy.
I think just one of the things to bear in mind, and again, I'm wearing my hat this is my professional area of expertise, is that we have approached this with a very narrow approach of capital A, single family only, or, just apartments or what have you. We haven't had a more holistic approach of combining zoning changes, as well as, various types of incentive programs, et cetera, looking at the totality of the housing market, from the extremely low income to the missing middle to even the higher income earners, making sure that, there's a nut, there's a bolt for every wrench, or whatever the saying is. So that basically, if you need housing, no matter where you are on the income spectrum, there's some kind of option available for you. So my point is simply that it's always yes and at this point. It's not a matter of there's one silver bullet, there isn't. It's pushing all the levers at the same time to get kind of where we're going.
Well, we can send our kids to school together. We should be able to put our housing force working together. I'm just so against the town line thing. Why should we give money to Dennis? Well, between 3 different towns, think of how much more you could do.
Oh, yeah. No, believe me, I'm a big proponent of regionalization and economies of scale, but that is also a somewhat of a third rail.
Yes, it is.
Any other questions that I can answer? And please, any of you feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to follow up on this or any other issues.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay?
Yeah. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks,
Stephanie.
Stephanie.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having me.
Are you next, Karen? Oh, Bray Farm. So we're doing that.
We can try.
Yep,
Jeff
still.
is back on.
Yep, he's
I was
back.
gonna text him.
Do I have to? ask
Yeah.
her to
Well, I
be here?
think what Jeff's here, we don't have to keep them any longer. We'll do Hill Bray Farm and Sandy Pond.
Okay, so. Hillary Farm and Jeff will chime in. We've made a lot of progress on the second phase plans. Working with Catalyst Architects as well as Coastal Engineering. We have a septic system that's designed. We've given the septic system design to Catalyst so that they can integrate that into their plans for the barn. We did run into some additional work that was required of Coastal. Kind of the structural follow-up on the barn after phase 1 and before phase 2. So all of that's needed to be integrated into the architect's plans. We will not, unfortunately, have a bid in hand for town meeting. We're disappointed about that. We will, however, have a professional cost estimate that we should have a week, in a week's time. We've been finalizing some of the design plans, working with the association and the architect. We should have some plans. Everything is by and large like for like. We've got our Old Kings Highway permitting in hand. It was done through the certificate of exemption process because it is a like for like. The plans, one update aside, getting to having the barn open to the public on a regular basis. The association will have the farmhouse open. Wanted to let you all know. It'll be open on April 16 and again on, I want to say, May 21.
They had 3 days.
I think they had one in March.
Right.
But those 2 days, I assume it will be also open, speak for the association, which I probably shouldn't. But I'm guessing that it would be open again on June 17, which is the scheduled day for the sheep festival. Which
Well,
will go on.
we asked them to give us their schedule for
Yeah.
12 days open and we haven't received that.
Oh, well, I
So
can get a
if we-
schedule, but we don't have the barn but if you want the farmhouse, we'll get that,
Yeah.
but it'll be open in general, during the summer, but I'm happy to follow up and we'll get something in writing, but
Well, why wouldn't why wouldn't the barn be open? Why would it have? to
because
go?
it will
What's
be
the
under
structural
construction.
concerns?
Because it would be under construction, so we'd want.
I'd like to see, I'd like to see at least the farmhouse, you know, because it wasn't open for the
Not a
last 2
problem.
years.
We're working on the cleaning contract, which is, again, Paul, going back to the general fund funds that we use for CPA eligible or the CPA categories, things like cleaning. I don't know if Jeff is on.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's doing. I made him a co-host in case he was having trouble unmuting. I've asked him.
Okay,
to-
there he is.
There he is.
Okay.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm just having a hard time hearing everybody in the room, but Karen did a great job with the update. I think the only thing I would add is one of the things that complicated items is the filed subbids for both the roof as well as electrical. We'll need to do filed subbids. It's just another step in the procurement process. And because of that additional time and additional bid openings that need to happen, we just weren't able to get the bid in before town meeting. But we have been working with Catalyst, and right now we've penciled in April 25th as the date we'd like to get this project advertised. So that's the only thing I would add.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, so anybody have any questions of Karen or Jeff? As it relates to Tilbury Farm? Okay, hearing none, then I guess about Sandy Pond. That
I'll
I
leave
just
it.
know-
It looks great. My
does look
opinion.
great.
There's a picture on Facebook.
It looks-
Yeah, while we're waiting on Jeff, I'd encourage everybody, John Marie and I were out,
2 weeks ago.
yeah, or like a week and a half ago, and we went by Sandy Pond. I encourage you to drive down there. They're going gangbusters on the playground equipment. You can see where the splash pad will be filled in.
What's the target date to be opening?
I'd have to rely on Jeff for that.
It looks like
target
it's
date.
on target. to me, isn't it?
It look, yeah, and Amanda Lima, our town engineer, who's been kind of running point on this one, has done a
I
really
think
super
it's
job.
the,
It looks
the
great.
weather was what helped us.
Oh,
Because
what
they got
weather?
no front. they got no frost in it. But
Yeah, I
they
could
made,
provide an update on the schedule. And that is June. We're actually hoping for the middle of June to be complete. Really, the temperature needs to be right in order to pour the rubber mat surface that makes it, fully accessible, the playground. And so that piece is just something that needs to be a little bit warmer, but they're making great progress. They're going to spread some gravel to prepare for that surface, and everything is going well with regard to the schedule.
certainly looks like it. I can say good job by who's ever doing that.
Amanda's running point, so.
Well, anybody have any, I'd encourage everybody to drive by it too. I mean, it's be a great project for kids in this town and all through the community. It's a great looking playground.
It's beautiful.
Can I ask hopefully a very quick question? What's the town doing now as far as communication? We have newspapers hardly exist anymore.
Right.
So how do you get the information? How are you attempting to get
So-
information out about Sandy Pond, about Taylor Brick
Yeah.
Farm, about even I attended a school committee meeting the other night. I guess I really,
Oh, man.
yeah, I know. It's interesting.
Oh, you
Glutton
to your
for punishment.
roots.
But there's, what's out
Right.
there? I know you
It's
have
a
websites.
challenge. We have, so two things. One, we have a communications manager position that's been graded by the personnel board, and the selectmen approved it.
Yeah.
And it's part of the budgets that need to be approved at the annual town meeting. So if we get approval on that staffing, then we would have a new communications manager to help with all of this stuff. Couldn't agree with you more. In the meantime, we have.
I would say most people in town don't even know Sandy Pond is happening.
Yeah.
It's
It-
just great.
Right, and we really don't, Paul's right, we don't
That's
have
right.
the register. I
Mhm.
I mean, I have the luxury of, in Sandwich, we have a really fantastic local paper, they cover the local meetings. They
Even
really
San-
know what's going on. You know, and articles about bids coming out. Who's doing what in town, but in the meantime, Paul, we're working with our IT department who work with the, I'll call them the media folks.
Yeah.
It's the folks that run the TV that you see on Thursday nights at the Conservation Commission
Oh, yeah.
meetings. And when we have information regarding kind of anything that we want posted, they're managing our Facebook. I don't know that we're on Instagram. I think we're on Twitter, and updates to the website. So things like the cleanup day
Yeah.
that's sponsored through the conservation office. That type of stuff lands on Facebook, but it's challenging.
I understand people go on things like Twitter, so.
So like,
there are people that if they see that posted, usually through, may not be through the town, they'll put it on, there's like private, I want to call Facebook groups. So the best of Yarmouth or the best of Dennis, or, you know, Yarmouth community, like Girl Scouts does that a lot during cookie season. It's all social media because there is no newspaper anymore. And everything's just done electronically.
Yeah.
So people will, so if there was something on Sandy Pond, somebody might post it on other sites and then it just multiplies, because then I see it like in 8,000 different places. So it's just up to whoever's.
right.
Like,
I
if
mean,
there's
a
a
good-
Sandy Pond Facebook page, then you could get more adult parents and whatnot to get on and then
Or even the
start.
recreation.
Right,
department,
the recreation
that's their
department
own
can sub, yeah.
Facebook, They
They
can
could
do
put it
it.
on, yeah.
And it's coordinating all of
Right,
that and
right.
encouraging it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
the great examples, we have one of our staff, it's Lisa Sherman, her husband is real involved with, there's this Cape Cod walking group. I can't remember.
Nordic Club or
Nordic
something.
Walking, are you in there?
Okay.
And her husband is seemingly active in
Yeah,
it.
very
And he took the post from the cleanup day and shared it on the Nordic
Nordic
Walker
Group, yeah,
group.
yeah.
And, yeah, and they've got,
But that's
they've got like
it's just
70
average
people
citizens.
signed up.
Posting,
Yeah.
posting, and a lot of it's still like older folks will use Facebook, the younger kids won't, like my kids that live in town. They're in their 30s, they won't
Mhm.
use Facebook, they'll use Instagram, not even Twitter. So it just depends on the age group and who you want to touch, yeah,
Yeah.
and which platform you're gonna use.
Yeah, no. It's just a troglodytes like me, I don't know.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Do you use Facebook?
I've heard
I'll
about it.
call
you
you,
can tell
I'll call
your-
you when something's going on.
You
then.
can
How's
tell
that,
your
Bob?
neighbors.
My wife will say, hey, I saw this.
Yeah, yeah.
But I, you know, again,
But
you know, I guess.
they never put them.
Like a lot
The
of us
newspaper
don't
spot,
write
so
that.
it's-
Reason
yeah.
it's there
Yeah.
is
I just
we
wanna
recommend
comment
it, they
because
go
I'm
there,
ADD,
just
you know?
went through that, they never put that.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's your
I'm with you,
sponsoring
but
there.
Obviously,
You and I-
recommend it because it's there.
Dinosaurs.
The more
If you didn't
people
recommend
like me-
Printed.
But thank you.
We're not recommending you approve it or not. It's- Here it is.
Oh, social
Mr.
media.
Chairman, I've got to
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Good
So-
meeting.
so the
Thanks.
best part is-
go on to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Joanne.
A good meeting.
Oh, yeah.
There's a planning board meeting at 5 o'clock. Here's your public broadcast.
Okay, so that's it on Sandy Pond, right? Ready,
That is-
any more questions about that? All right, thanks, Jeff. You can go,
Thanks, Jeff.
and then we have.
Thank you very much.
Friends of Bass River, there's nobody here for that, right?
Well, I can give you an
Karen
update.
can
update
a little bit on the
One-stop shopping.
Logistics.
Lots of updates. So Friends of Bass River, we met internally, town administrator Jeff Colby from DW, Amanda Lima, town engineer, and myself. And we met with Rick because there'd been this is really a unique project where it's been advocated for by the Friends of Bass River, which is a private nonprofit, but it's by and large more of a town project. And I know that Friends of Bass River was having difficulty because part of our contract, part of our financial policies for the town requires a reimbursement, which would have meant an upfront payment from Friends of Bass River to their vendors. So we've worked out a contract amendment and are working with DPW, who will review invoices and things like that. And the town will be able to facilitate payment direct. But as I mentioned to Gary, this is really a unique instance. It's not something that we want to include in all of our contracts going forward. It was very unique.
And I don't think we want to do it in the future. Worked before, I understand their frustration, but the people who are on the board of Friends of Bass River, they have the wherewithal to go and seek a line of credit.
From my point of view, I mean, I think that the committee's been very clear, the town's been very clear that this is a reimbursement fund program. It's in all of your application materials, it's in all of your contract materials. We mention it at every interview. So it's been clear up front. But again, this is a unique situation where I think the town will be ultimately to take in more active.
And they'll be oversight by the town.
Eventually.
Okay,
Do you want me to throw in another one? Another update? 'Cause I know
yeah,
Christine-
because I know
Might as
Christine.
well, right? And it's good for Judy too, to hear about another project that is.
That's what she's gonna do.
Well, I'll introduce myself. We can- But Yankee Village, 275 Route 28. I'm calling it West Yarmouth Parks. I've just, because people didn't want us to call it Yankee Village anymore, because it's not Yankee Village. It's gonna be a park, so trying to refer to it as West Yarmouth Parks. It has been a long time coming, but we did go out to bid in the fall RFP. We had 3 responses. One was very, very expensive and way out of our budget. But anyways, we are working happily with Coastal Engineering again, same folks, different group that are helping us out with the barn. And we're working to finalize that contract and we'll be getting going. Right now, I asked for an updated timeline, and I think it has construction ending, and I can get you more information. Construction ending in May of 25. So, but there's a lot of work to do in between if we can get that. Again, this is another one of those projects with lots of permitting. And if the Chapter 91 license can move faster than expected, then the construction schedule.
Is that the bridge?
That's the bridge. The bridge is the tricky permitting. Trickiest permitting.
So we can't build a park without the bridge?
We can build a
I
park
meant the
without the
bridge
bridge, but
come in later.
the idea here was to have a master plan for the park system and to do everything all at once. Is when we kind of break down the project into little pieces, somehow things take longer than usual.
Is what's frustrating is that it's been sitting there as a pile of bark mulch for 20 years now. So people drive by that and they know what we paid for it, and like, what did we pay that amount of money for that for?
We're doing our best, Gary.
I know, it's
That's what
just
we're doing.
frustrating that this stuff takes that long to do a park.
I'm frustrated
Mhm.
too. We're making progress on a number of projects. And that's what we're doing. We're working on the Summer Street Arch. It's another CPA project. George and the rest of the RFP committee met last week on that one.
Good, well, I hope they don't block off 6A for months like they have. Because you know,
Walk over.
you can't get to my office during the week. I can't even park in my office.
Is that for the water main? project?
Who knows what?
Oh.
Yes.
I don't know.
I think they did. I'm just calling it the park system.
I think Chase.
That way it's easier.
In the park itself is just big construction.
It's,
Really?
it's the construction, it's removing the invasives
Okay.
and restoration, putting in native species.
So, and then joining.
And then joining the 3 parks. So there's 3,
The
there's
three
the Inn
together,
Village
yeah.
site and then
Yeah.
each of the bookend parks.
Yeah.
And work on the pathways as well, is there?
That's right. To really make it one single park.
And accessible.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any other updates, Karen?
And on the updates?
You want to just throw out there?
Anything else on that?
Just the signage at the gristmill, how's that?
I'll put that back on the list, Gary. That's not on the list. That's not a. That's just getting the new sign.
Well, you got the parking sign and the sign for the mill, right?
There's a few, I mean, maybe I'm not sure. I'm not prepared to
Yeah,
talk
well-
about it. I haven't looked at the parking situation of Extra Christmas.
Well, there's a parking lot
Recently.
there, but nobody would know it's parking for the gristmill,
Okay,
which it was designated for the
right,
gristmill.
Over to the right.
Right, so nobody knows you can park there unless you happen to be somebody who goes there. Should say, very simply, gristmill parking.
there's a lot of signage needed in town. A lot of signage. There's no signs
So,
in a few places.
There's also a lot of signs that should come down.
Yeah, that's for sure. Oh.
Maybe you can use the back of.
With the Sharpie.
I think that's
All
all
right.
we have on updates, unless you have anything wonderful. But thanks for doing it all.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess next we have town meeting preps, which according to Karen, now we're going back to what we did 2 years ago, right? And then next year, we're
I
gonna go
think-
back. So that means we'll be returning the articles at town meeting, not the select.
And you have this CPA summary sheet attached to the warrant articles, right? Because we had talked about these assignments a couple months ago. Is everybody still good with those assignments? Gary talking about the estimated revenue, the housekeeping article. And it's not talking about so much as literally reading
The script.
the warrant or the script. We could make a script with bigger font if you want. It's gonna also be on the screen, above the Board of Selectmen, the actual text of the warrant article. So it's it's all very specific what you are gonna be saying. You don't have to think too hard.
That's perfect.
Right? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the Lee doing the housing motion, it's really just one, an explanation of 3 projects.
Will Lee do Article 30 as well?
I think so. Lee, did you understand that as well, to do the community housing project amendment, or would you rather have someone else read that?
I think it should all come from the same. person.
Yeah, I didn't see it on the list, but I thought that might be something I should do. And
Yes.
Yes,
I
and
think I-
actually, I'll make that more clear on the list as well.
Okay. Yeah,
you're gonna do a script? Ready to go. As usual.
Yeah, as usual, and it really is like Don Marie, the script will really be. We'll make everything, we were talking about it today, Don Marie and I, and we'll do it so we have every article just on one page. And you have the the article and then the motion. Are you
Read
gonna-
the article, it goes to the moderator, right? The
Mhm.
moderator asks us to read, we propose such and such article as written in the warrant. Then he comes back and asks for a description.
Yeah, after the second.
So
then
that's
they,
where the script comes in.
Which is the explanation.
Yep.
Because this is the thing, we've evolved, the warrant has evolved over the last few years. Not just to include the motion, but it also includes a brief explanation.
Right.
And the explanation is generally what we've used in the past as the script. So it's, you know, the bad part is there's no surprise involved, people can read along with me. So, but it's
Well, the surprise comes is when the moderator goes back and asks if there's any questions.
right,
And then you're standing there going, all right, who's gonna ask me the question that I don't have the answer to and never considered? That's the
Right.
scary.
and that's why you brainstorm and try to think of everything you can think of.
Yep,
And-
and we
and
all
get
know
your
there's
answers
certain
queued
people
up.
who just, they think it's a game show. Let's ask them this, because they know they don't have the answer.
Well, and of course, again, I'll be reaching out to all the applicants to make sure that they're fully aware that they will be called on by the
Right.
moderator to respond to questions about their particular projects. Because they have the best, background and knowledge. So George, you're still okay doing historic,
Yes, ma'am.
and Christine doing the open space,
2 parts, right?
and then,
That one's gonna be tricky.
right,
Christine, because generally we move. And again, this goes back to your question about the free cash, so I think it's an important conversation for us to have with Bob and the moderator. Because the way, our new tradition is we bundle the articles. So we have all of the open space / recreation in one place. And generally you move article 32 as printed in the warrant. And then in your explanation, you say, oh, well, this article has 3 components. The first is, Friends of Bass River, so forth and so on. Second is Whitey Red Sox. And the third, it's here, it's part of the bundle, the way we set up the articles, so. But you,
If we're both standing up there, then there's any questions on the first 2,
oh, sure, and I think that that's an important point, because I think
Oh.
that any times there's questions, and this is, we'll try to do the Q and As like we always do. Whoever's speaking at the mic, it's best, my opinion, if you can try to answer the question, that's great. If not, then from this list, who's the backup.
Right.
And we're always there. You can always call on staff.
and Joanne will do Article 33, the bond authorization.
And that one will have, the way we do have the little presentation plan. So we'll figure it all out.
And so you've got the most recent version of the
Town-
warrant.
Town account be there for those questions, right? The
Yes.
bonding.
Yes. Well, we have a new,
Who's the
we have a new treasurer. Anne Marie Ellis, so we're working on scheduling some time with her, should there be questions. Just so you know, too,
I know.
Bob Rittenhour, our town administrator, took the bonding article went through, town council, but also bond council. So bond council has, reviewed it, it's tight, and I think in the warrant, there's actually an extra. The motion is, unique there, so that Joanne will have to read that motion. When you look at, page 33, it's right before the nice picture of forward. It has the article as printed, the explanation, and then what the motion will be.
Okay, I don't know if there's anything else that we need to discuss as far as town meeting.
Well, what I was gonna say,
They all look good.
with the list of questions and answers, do you prefer bullets? Or an actual Q&A? I mean, if anybody has a preference, I can set it up any way that you prefer.
I prefer
And
bullets.
I'll have it like for the community housing projects. I'll pull out from this list.
You can have it, but when you stand up there, you never go back in.
It's hard, right? Yeah,
Right.
it's hard to look for the information that you're trying to
So it's
find.
nice that we have it, but can't you, good for the person who's presenting to read it ahead of time,
Mhm.
so you have it in you. But
Yeah.
if somebody asks a question, then you sit there and go, wait a minute, and you. That's as good as death.
And usually, right, just naturally what happens is somebody, the applicant gets up and says, like Jeff
Right.
Colby will say, oh, let me explain that.
That's usually best.
And if you think of any other questions that you want added to these bullet points
I
or
would
this
say less-
Q&A,
less better.
you can let me know and I'll add them. And you think you want to plan to meet at 5:30?
Town meeting's at 6, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we should, just in case it's happened before and then somebody doesn't go up and then somebody has to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the main reason for the meeting.
Where you wanna meet down front?
Just meet in front where we all sit, which is in the auditorium, Judy, so you know we sit, which section do you
Oh, I've been to,
know where we all sit?
oh, down front.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Did you say it's at 7, not 6?
It's at 6, but
They thought-
CPC will meet at 5:30.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think I continue meeting at, town meeting.
I think this is the
It's the
last
new-
one, right? I think this is the last meeting at Matikes and the next one in the fall,
I don't know,
To the new school.
maybe in the news.
maybe. That would be nice.
I'd love to put us outside again in the
Yeah.
field.
It
That was fun. Remember it rained?
was almost a day like today. It was
It was.
rainier, but it was cold and gray
rainier.
and nasty.
And they put me sitting down front next to, what's her name? Vita, sitting next to her. I don't care if he is, if she was sitting next to her.
All right.
So if you sit next to me this year, Vita, be quiet, because I should try and answer the question.
All right, and I thought having a new member joining us, Judy, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
I should have introduced her first.
Right at the beginning, so.
Had my personal welcome by Christine.
Yeah, well, I met with
I
you.
said hello.
Yeah, no.
Well, it seemed also like a good time
Yeah, I
to
already did.
redistribute, some of the reference materials, that everyone, I'm sure, enjoys in their leisure, reading and reviewing.
So if you want, Judy, you can briefly introduce yourself to everybody and tell her where you.
Who my architect is?
Yeah.
My name is Judy Wilczynski, live in, off of Center Street in Yarmouth Court. We moved full-time in 2018 from Westboro, where we lived for 30 years, in Central Mass. One of my sons and his family live in South Yarmouth, and we have a daughter in California and another son on the South Shore in Cohasset. I was involved with, town committees in Westboro for years in Girl Scouts, and I head up the Girl Scouts for Dennis Yarmouth right now down here. And I have a cadet troop. And I'm involved with the Women's Club and Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and I part of the Nordic Walking Group as well. Yes, so thought I'd get involved with some town committees.
Great,
Yes,
welcome.
Thanks. Thanks, Joanne.
Welcome.
And my architect is okay.
Is the project done?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
During COVID, it was
Better
great.
be.
It was an outside, it was an outdoor project porch, so yes, it was great. Could be done during COVID.
Great.
That's when we started, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah,
We
just
started.
before COVID, yeah. You came
Yep.
out.
Perfect. All right. So the only thing we have left are minutes.
The minutes, yeah, on the agenda, you have a couple of sets of minutes listed that are not ready. Maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't. The minutes of December 21st, 22 are not ready to be voted. And neither are the executive session minutes, September 24th, 22 and September 10th, 2020. So we'll hold off on those until they're ready. But for the minutes of January 25th, 2023,
I move we accept the minutes of January 25th, 23.
Seconded?
Motion by Christine, seconded by George. Seeing we are voting on this. I need to do the voice, although some people say not. George,
Aye.
Marion,
I wasn't here, sorry.
Judy,
Abstain.
Aye.
Gary, I, Lee. Lee's still there.
Lee?
Like she's up.
He's
I
gone.
think she's.
oh, okay. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Good.
And I
Um,
move we accept the minutes of November 30th, 22.
Second.
Seconded?
Motion by Christine, seconded by George. All in favor, George,
Aye.
Marion,
Aye.
Paul,
I,
Abstain.
Aye.
Gary, I.
Okay. The minutes, I'll just let you know them. I think these are the ones, George, right? You noticed that on page 2 of the minutes of September 14th. Where was it? It was the top paragraph there. Mr. Slama noted that the Yarmouth Historical Society is very concerned. That will be corrected to say the Yarmouth Historical Commission. So those can be moved as amended.
So moved.
Motion by George, seconded
second,
by Paul. Okay, all in favor, George,
Aye.
Marion, Paul,
I,
Abstain.
Aye.
Christine, Gary, I.
Right? And July 13th, 2022.
I move that we accept the minutes of July 13th, 22.
Motion by Christine,
Seconded?
by George, favor, George,
Aye.
Marion,
Aye.
Paul,
I.
Abstain.
Aye.
I, Gary, I.
Great. Thank you so much.
So that is it, unless there's any staff or committee update. Anything new that we need? Here. Not, we can hear a motion to adjourn. By Mary Ann,
Aye.
seconded by
Second.
Christine. All right, all in favor?
I.
Aye.
Aye. So voiced by everyone.
Thank you.
That's good.
All right, see you all.
Good work.
Thank you, Don Marie.